You're listening to the Good Food CFO podcast, where we focus on financial strategies for building a profitable food business. I'm your host, Sarah Delavan. Hey guys, I sat down to record this podcast episode, the last episode of season 4, so episode 49 of the Good Food CFO podcast. And I had very specific intentions. I was going to talk about recession. I was going to talk a bit about inflation. I was going to share 3 fundamental things that you can do to maintain or create healthy profit margins, even through a recession and through inflation, quite frankly. And as I started to record myself, things kept going off into a different direction. And I thought, why am I trying to resist this direction that the episode is trying to take to keep it on track? Clearly, there's something I want to say. And what is this platform if not an avenue to say what's on my mind? To date, the podcast has been a place to share, tips and mindset and ideas and, different things surrounding the finances of your food business. And we've had a lot of amazing guests on the show who help us to think about all of the aspects of our business as it relates back to the finances. And I've enjoyed all 48 episodes that I have done to date. But as I sit down to record episode 49, I can't help but think if we could go a little bit deeper, if we could sort of create more change, if we dug a little deeper and not necessarily change the format, but got a little bit louder about some of the things that are really on my mind. And so, as I said, as I sat down to record episode 49, I had the script in front of me. I knew what I was going to talk about, and things just kind of went their own way. So where it kept going was on the topic of inflation and how I think about inflation, what my true thoughts are about inflation, and how that has really helped me to double down in terms of what Sarah Delavan Consulting and the Good Food CFO are doing and the mission that we're trying to achieve. But not only that, how it has, recommitted me to my work and helped me think about all that needs to change in this industry that we call the food industry. Whether you're in CPG as a brand, or you are a retailer, or you are a cafe, or a market, like no matter what role your business plays in the food system, I think we all are trying to fight a really big fight. And the concept of inflation and how we got here to where we are right now, the sort of fear of recession, I think, it's just, as I said, recommitting me to the work that we're doing here. And, I hope it's also lighting a fire underneath you as a food business owner, to be profitable and to really affect change in the industry. And so it's where my mind kept going. It's where the script kept wandering off to. So we're just going to dig in. So 3 of the drivers that have had a direct effect on the food industry in terms of inflation and where we are right now is, of course, the global supply chain issues that resulted from COVID and affected the relationship of supply and demand. I'm sure it's impossible to forget the imagery of ships literally, sitting out on the water, unable to offload their shipping containers. And then the stories of the shipping containers sitting full for months on end with businesses unable to get their product from those containers. All of that led to the increased price of the products inside of those containers. No one in the industry was really able to avoid the effects of this. We almost immediately saw the cost of packaging skyrocket, right? Everything from glass bottles to paper bags to labels, right? Literally anything that your product goes into, we saw the prices go up. And not only that, we saw the lead time to receive that packaging get extended, pretty significantly extended. So across the board, the global supply chain had an effect on the food industry and definitely trickled down to the good food industry. There's also something called fiscal policies. Now, fiscal policies are complicated, and the effects of the policies that were put in place in 2020 and 2021 are under much debate. For the sake of this conversation, I want to touch on the increased cost of labor and how that plays a part in inflation and the rising costs in your business and also, obviously in other businesses. So through 2020, we saw a lot of different things happening to people. Some people, especially women, were forced to leave their jobs to take care of their families. Other folks simply didn't have a job to go to. We saw that in the food industry so much. I mean, restaurants, catering companies, right? So many food businesses that simply were not allowed to operate per the government. So those folks, were out of work. And then we saw on the flip side of that, folks who had to continue to go to work and put themselves at risk every day. And, they were thanked as, working on the front line, but oftentimes they weren't paid what would seem like fair compensation to be doing that level of work and to be in front of the public on a regular basis. As people started to come back to work, there was a universal ask for more money. And I support that completely. But we also know as small business owners that there's only so much to go around within our own businesses. So for our suppliers, their labor costs were in many cases going up, right? They're also feeling the effects of the supply chain issues. And so the cost of the products that we buy beyond our packaging, right? We see those going up. In our own businesses, if we're able to and we're willing to, we saw the price of our labor go up as well. And of course, that pinches our margins in our business. And if we want to maintain those margins, we also need to increase our prices. There are other solutions to maintaining your margins, but most often, especially because of the increase in costs, price increases were the way to go to protect our margins and to be able to pay our team members more money as it was needed. The third thing, and this is the thing that really I've wanted to talk about since early on in the inflation days, is oligopolies and corporate greed. Supply chain issues, fiscal policy, and increased wages are said to account for about 2 to 3% price increases, right? But what we're actually seeing is so much higher than that. And at the time that I'm recording this episode, the rates are about like 8% or higher across the board. And in our industry, we're seeing cost increases 13% or higher in terms of cost of goods sold. Executives have been heard on earnings calls bragging about their ability to hike prices beyond need for their profit and the profit of their board. We've actually seen this firsthand at Sarah Delavan Consulting, most recently with distributors raising prices to retailers on brands that have not increased their prices. And we've seen firsthand retailers raising their prices to consumers beyond what is necessary to maintain their margins, most recently to the tune of a 10% margin increase. These are price increases and margin increases for the benefit of retailers and distributors on the backs of small businesses. And throughout the industry as a whole, they're being made on the backs of consumers and the individuals who pick, process, and pack the food that we eat. If I'm not being clear enough, what I am saying is that corporations within the food industry, from the big major food producers to the major retailers to the major distributors, are all looking out for themselves and their profits, quite frankly, as they need to a certain degree, to keep their business operational. but they are doing so to the tune of the highest profits in company history in many cases. And the struggle that we have as good food business owners is that we're fighting for shelf space on retail shelves where we're forced to compete against corporations who are, even with increased prices on the shelf, still have artificially low priced products because they're not paying their farmers and their labor force fairly for the work that they are doing. And they're pocketing the profits from the price increases that they're giving. This is why profit gets a bad rap. This is why so many of us enter into the good food industry and say, I'm not doing this for profit. I am doing this to create change. But here's the deal. We need profitability in our businesses to succeed and to remain on the shelf to compete against these large corporations. But our work is really cut out for us because we have a lot of education to provide to our consumers. And we have a lot of work to do on our end to say, how do I want to fight this battle? Do I want to, play their game, or do I want to do this on my own terms and not try to fight for big box retail shelf space and try to grow my brand another way? The good news is that you have options, right? You can choose to build your business however you want. I remember back to when I started Sarah Delavan Consulting, even before that, when I started my food business, the missions were essentially the same. And that was to get better food and better products into more homes across the US. My business didn't succeed. I worked with a partner, but I refer to it as my business because I'm the only one here. My business didn't succeed because we had bad information about what it was going to take to be profitable and how to build a profitable business, but also because we thought that profit was a dirty word, and that because we were trying to do something good within the food industry, we needed to be the complete opposite of the corporations that we were fighting against. When I started Sarah Delavan Consulting, the mission, as I said, was very similar. We want to get better products on our shelves and into more homes, because what the big brands are offering are soy and sugar laden, right? Even tomato sauce and vegetables are tainted with added ingredients that we don't need in there that can actually make people sick. But as time has gone by since I started Sarah Delavan Consulting and now the Good Food CFO, what I have realized is it's not about just being on the shelf. It's not just about, creating something that's better than what they are creating. It's about understanding that we need to be profitable so that we can succeed and fulfill our missions. And we don't have to do it the way that large corporations and the oligopolies of the world are doing it, right? We can do it while being fair to our team, being fair to our consumer, and being fair to everyone along the supply chain. And in fact, I'm motivated more in my work today as a result of what's going on in the industry right now. Large corporations don't want small businesses to succeed because they lose shelf space and they lose share of the market. And I think that the game of CPG is set up for those big companies to win and for small businesses to lose. Hence the, free fills and slotting fees to the tune of $200,000 to enter into a brand new retail chain. But that doesn't mean that we can't succeed. It just means we need to be really prepared if we're going to play their game. But we can also be willing to say, I am not playing that game. I'm going to build a business on my own terms. And that can be a D2C. brand. That can be a farmer's market based brand, right? That can be an e-commerce brand or a food service brand. There are so many ways to build a business within the food space. And no matter which one you choose, if you're successful in growing your company, it means you're successful in sourcing more good ingredients. It means you're successful in supporting more humans along the supply chain, right? Fairly and equitably. It means that you are able to employ more people or perhaps pay your team more money or both. It's not about getting on the retail shelf necessarily. It's about succeeding in getting your product into the hands and the homes of as many people as possible. And however you want to do that is a great way to do that. As I said at the top of the episode, this episode 49 was supposed to be completely different. It was supposed to be 3 tips for, maintaining or achieving healthy profit margins. It was supposed to be, a little bit about, what are the causes of inflation? But really, where my mind has been over the last couple of weeks as we prepared to record this episode, it's been a little bit in a place of anger about what this industry is really all about and the role that we can play and need to play in truly changing it. Dare I say, revolutionizing it. Because I think if we get loud enough, there is an opportunity where we don't, quote, have to play the game by their rules anymore, and we can start demanding our own rules and our own ways to play. And we're seeing that right now on a small level where we're taking the numbers, right? We're taking the math that we're doing on our end with our clients and with our group members, and they're able to take that to retailers and go, here's the deal. This old math doesn't work for me because I'm making 30, 40% margin on my product and you're making 50, 60. And that just doesn't work for me. Because also, by the way, on top of these margins, I'm also paying fees to the distributor, right? That are lowering my margins. So how about we do it this way instead, where it's equitable throughout the supply chain, right? The retailer, the distributor, if they're involved, and me as the brand are all making a good amount of money, which should be sufficient for this relationship. The product is priced right on the shelf so that people can buy it, and we're all able to achieve our goals. That's the future industry that I want to see. That's the future of CPG that I want. And I do believe that it can happen. It's not going to happen overnight, and it's going to require that food business owners do very scary things, like negotiate and say no to distributors and retailers who are not meeting them financially where they need to be met. And I think it's especially important for women-owned and BIPOC-founded businesses because you all are taken advantage of more often than not because it looks good to have your product on shelf. Retailers and distributors want you on their shelves so they can check the box of having women-owned and BIPOC-owned businesses on their shelf. But the reality is, if they're not willing to pay you a fair rate for your product, what is the value and the benefit to you of being on the shelf? If there is not one, then you don't have to say yes, right? Wait for an opportunity where a true partner comes along and puts you on their shelf, right? Or agrees to put you on their shelf at an equitable price for everyone involved. I know there are many business owners out there who don't want to play the game the way that it's currently set up. And I know that some people listening might be like, well, that's why you need funding. You have to have investment. And as a women-owned or BIPOC business owner, you need funding in order to succeed. And we simply need more funding. I agree that more funding should be going to those types of businesses and those business owners. But what if the cost to play wasn't so high? What if it was simply a more equitable industry where the brand wasn't consistently making the least amount of money in a partnership? What if the brand wasn't having to pay the distributor additional money on top of the cost of creating their product, paying their team, and running their company in order to get onto a large retailer shelf? What if things looked different? I want to be a part of the industry looking different. And I can't be quiet about that anymore. There were 2 weeks where we just kept getting hit with news about the behaviors, if you will, of distributors and retailers and investors, people who were trusted to help grow businesses and, increase sales and revenue. And in the end, the business owners were left with 6 and 7 figures in losses and debts that they needed to repay after their so-called investors and experts left or were asked to leave by the founders. There is no way that I can continue to do my work without speaking out loudly about what is not working in the industry and why it needs to change. And it makes me think about, as a young woman going to college, I wanted to be a business person. I always wanted to be a business person. I didn't know necessarily what that meant. And so I studied marketing at first because, in my undergrad, because I was like, that's sort of like everything, right? And marketing was very different back then than it is now. But in order to be a business person, I had to play their game, right? The guy's game. I had to dress like them, right? I had to wear business suits. I had to look professional. I had to work really hard. I had to stay overtime and, do all of these things behind the scenes when no one was looking to prove myself worthy to be at the table with these people. And now what I see happening generally in business is that we're flipping the script and we're saying we're not playing that game anymore. We're not going to show up to the corporate offices, wearing pantsuits because that's what makes us look strong and capable. We're going to show up as who we really are and be respected. And that didn't happen overnight. It's still not happening in a lot of places, but I see the parallel between how I used to show up in the corporate world and how we've been asking small businesses to show up in the CPG space, where we're saying, okay, this is the game. And if you want to succeed, you've got to play the game. And that means having a lot of money. That means having really small profit margins, but selling a lot of volume. That means not being profitable for who knows how long as you grow the business. These are things that I do not believe are necessary and that I think need to change. And so what we're doing through our work, and have been, but just haven't been shouting about it very loudly until now, because I simply can't not shout. What we're saying is that we're going to do it on our terms. If and when we decide to quote unquote play the game, we're also going to bring some negotiations to the table, and we're going to tell you what we need to be successful. And we'll let you know if we're wanting to play with you at all. And there are brands in the community, the profitable food business community now, who have walked away from large distributors because they could see how the game was not set up for the brand to succeed, but for the distributor and the retailer to succeed. And it's a hard decision to make, right? But if you're not making any money playing their game, then stop playing their game and make money on your own terms. That is what we are doing here. It's not to say that we're not going to talk about growth on the retail shelf. We will, because that might be the terms on which you want to grow your business. but we are going to say, what can you bring to the table so that it's equitable, right? That the relationship is equitable. How much funding do you really need? And who is the right funder for you, the right investor or the right partner, so that if you don't want to have losses for 3 years, that's not the situation you find yourself in. Matching you with the right partner is a critical part of this. But then we are also going to talk about, what if you just want to grow your business D2C? What if you want to be a farmer's market brand? What if you want to start out in food service because you've got a great product and you think chefs would love it? Or because you believe in what it is and getting it to hospitals and universities and middle schools and grade schools could change the way that people who need it most eat. I'm so grateful for, it's funny to say, I'm grateful for inflation because it has from day one to me been about greed. If you talked to me about inflation, you saw me make quotation marks around the word inflation because I never believed it was true inflation from day one. I'm thankful for my clients and group coaching program members who have brought to light the things that they are going through, who have brought to the profit assessment process the crap that they have been dealt by quote unquote experts in the industry who have driven their companies financially into the ground. And they are saying, this is tough. This is kind of embarrassing, but we are turning the ship around. I'm going to make this company my own again, and we're going to make it profitable. I am motivated and empowered by the strength and resiliency of the women and the BIPOC owners in particular within our community, because they are standing up and saying no. And it has given me the courage to not just say no or fight back or, help with negotiations behind the scenes, but now to also come on this platform where thousands of people listen to every episode, every week and every month, and to say that we are supporting brands who want to build a business on their own terms. We are not just going to accept the industry as it is because it's broken. It's not working anymore. It's not working for us, and we are going to change it. If you are a good food business owner who is currently building a business on their own terms or who desires to build a business on their own terms, we want to see you. Take a quick screenshot wherever you're listening to today's episode and share it on Instagram. Tag at sarah.delavan.consulting and let us know that you are part of this community and the movement to change our food industry for the better. I want to celebrate you. I want to congratulate you. Most of all, I want to show other food business founders that it can be done and that there is strength in numbers. I am so excited to connect with all of you and so grateful, as always, that you joined me here, but especially for this episode. I will be back with a brand new one in 2 weeks.